But today we are talking about the future of workplace and probably focus mostly on the integration of technology. As a workplace strategist, obviously we're trying to connect the workplace to drive the business strategy, and the delivery of that is through space, technology, behaviours and operations. And as we're finding that the technology component's becoming more and more important in terms of delivering that outcome for place. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I'm going to let you listen to these experts here in the room, and I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to read this so I don't get it completely wrong. So the first person I want to introduce you to is just Ed Wilson. Ed is the Smart Buildings lead for Deloitte. Ed did lead the development of Deloitte's advanced smart building function, and that's actually been deployed across Deloitte and in some international locations. I have seen it. It is very impressive. It delivers a full integrated frictionless experience for staff. It's office attendance, it's booking, it's space use, it's access control. And I think the thing that Ed, where it was very, very important, and this will be coming up in what we talk about, is the data that he used to drive decision making and efficiency. Okay, that's a big focus for what Deloitte is trying to do. It's been so successful that Deloitte is now considering this a advisory practice. So I'm going to let Ed kind of talk about what he's done there. So thanks for coming, Ed. I really appreciate it. I have Justin Anders. Give a little wave. Justin is the General Manager of Com Security. So Com Security delivers technology and security solutions across workplaces and commercial building environments. And we've actually worked with Justin on this office. So for some of you, if you get a chance to look around, you'll see this is a fully integrated experience. Justin's done a lot of work around that, whether it be water metering, integrating with yellow box digital solutions and digital access cards. But Justin's always hammering into me about focus on simplicity, reliability and quality is kind of his mantra to me. And he's worked extensively with Indra, with the New South Wales government on their digital access card solution, and they've linked that to office attendance, which is pretty impressive. And in this particular office, Justin was great at figuring out all the different use cases that we needed and designing the technology to support those use cases. So that's Justin for you. And then finally, but not the least important, is Darren. And although Darren does not work for Suncorp anymore, he is the former Technology Program Director at Suncorp ADN Heritage Lanes. A lot of you guys know about that building. It's considered a world-class building from a sustainability perspective. And Darren is an experienced Program Director with expertise in delivering large-scale workplace technology and smart building initiatives focused on integration, operational efficiency and employee experience. And at Suncorp, I tried to downplay your role, didn't I, the other day? Sorry, Darren. he was actually the key leadership role in the delivery and integration of that workplace and the building technologies within ADN. And his expertise really does surround that leading complex programs across workplace systems, smart building platforms, access control, collaborative technologies and operational integrations to create that seamless and connected workplace experience. Sorry, that's a long one, isn't it, Darren? I think, Darren has had a lot to do with the ADN base building work as well. So I think there's some of you guys in the room that have been talking a bit about dealing with different buildings and different base building systems. So any of these three guys can probably help and talk about that as well. So welcome guys. Lots of banter is fine. So I'm Lisa Copland. I'm Managing Director of Presynct. Why do I care? I do care, is because really for us an effective workplace strategy should enable, as I said, that organisational business strategy, and we look at that lens through space, technology, operations and behaviour, and really focusing on how those different elements, if they operate in sync, then you get something wonderful. And Darren talks about something invisible, which is almost what we want to do. But as I was saying, the role of technology in the workplace has really shifted, I'm seeing, from being a supportive infrastructure to a strategic catalyst. And that mostly is because of the integration of those systems. So people do have the standalone booking system. They might have, a security system, but when those are fragmented like that, multiple apps, repeated steps, we're finding that employees are losing time, momentum, and it's really creating a bit of cognitive bandwidth. But when those things are integrated, it's really creating a transformation in terms of minimising effort required to access, locate, use workplaces. It's really transforming that workplace or those interactions from a burden to an enabler. And some of the things, and I'm going to get to my question in a sec. It is coming. Some of the things that we're seeing in the modern workplaces are things like automated digital access passes being issued to Apple Wallets or Google Wallets based on planned attendance. So seeing a lot of that stuff happening already. Auto allocation or stacking of floors and spaces to make sure that teams are sitting together and working together and power can be turned off. You know, destination control lifts being activated through swipe digital access and directing people to different floors based on that attendance or that where the employee has been stacked. We're seeing a lot of, or we're seeing the need for a lot of smart access points that digitise or personalise data for the person that's just swiped through. Automated work point and meeting room check-ins, and even just starting to see event recommendations through calendar integration. So those are just some examples of what we're seeing that clients are asking for, not necessarily implemented, can I tell you, maybe struggling a little bit with that. But I suppose just starting the questioning off to Justin, I'd be interested in understanding what you're seeing. If that's what I'm seeing out there, or that's the request that I'm seeing, what are you seeing in terms of best practice for integrated data and technology? And I don't know if you have any real world examples.
Sure. I think over the last 10 years or so, where smart buildings has really sort of picked off, the focus originally was getting as much data as you could from every single system. And it didn't matter what system it was, it just get as much data as you could. And that sort of qualified a building to be smart. What ended up happening over a few years ago was that everyone started to question the large costs of maintaining that data and what was that data actually doing? Was it helping the workplace, the user experience, the operations? And then people started to think about, well, do I need all of that data if I'm paying so much for it? It's a high maintenance. It takes a lot of time and effort to control and maintain. So then the evolution went through about questioning the data that you actually need, and that then started pointing back to the use cases and the purpose of why do I need to connect to this system, right? You've got lots of systems. You've got 35 systems in a building potentially. So I don't need to connect to all of the data. What data do I need? And so forth. So therefore that then relays into the examples that you get. Is once you start connecting the right data for the right purpose, then you can start getting your operational efficiencies. So we can connect now workplace systems with HVAC systems so that workplace managers can lock down floors and turn off based on looking at people data or utilization data. And as you start seeing different elements of systems connecting to each other, then they start forming an educated decision so that you can automate building systems to function more efficiently. We've got workplace systems that can, work through on that front. I'm going to, for example, we can run based off weather data and access control data and sensor data. I can tell HVAC systems to turn off and to turn on, which will increase the efficiency of that plant. In some cases over in America, people are having about 80,000 runtime hours saved on their HVAC equipment, which then equates to quite a lot of money. All of that centrally is put down into understanding the right purpose for the right data that you want, focusing on that, and then that enables then your efficiency.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good answer. And that does highlight some of the efficiency that you can get out of sort of that base building and making those decisions. I suppose, Darren, with the Suncorp work that you did, what does best practice look like for experience for the end user?
Yeah, it was one of the things we looked at very early on in our planning of how do our current buildings operate today? What is the average user's experience of our technology? And the danger is always, as technologists, you start getting excited with all the latest technology coming out, all the latest gadgets. So let's fill the building up with gadgets. Most people don't care about all of the technology. They want a nice, easy, frictionless experience to get into the building. They want to be able to use a single app generally. That means it can govern how they're booking their desk, how they're actually booking meeting rooms, how they're actually navigating their security credentials to get around. And that's something we put right front and center of all our design. As technologists, we always had to step back and say, what is the human experience we want to deliver? How do we keep it simple for our people to actually use? And when we looked at some of our current video conferencing environments, even within the same building, you had to work out which panel you were going to go to, which button you're going to press to try and join your meeting. I said, we can't do that anymore. We have to make this simple, where someone goes into the meeting room, it knows already who you are because it's seen who you are, recognize that you are the meeting organizer, and it knows to trigger your meeting. And it will then say, are you ready to start your meeting? Nice and simple. Or you can actually ignore the voice prompts and just press a button and join. It shouldn't take 5 minutes to work out how to start your meeting. Quite a few companies have different conferencing systems as well, whether it's Cisco, Teams, and it should all be from exactly the same interface as well. You shouldn't have to fight with the systems. So again, keeping it simple, keeping technology invisible, keeping powerful technology running in the background, controlling the environments, but make it invisible to the actual users of the building. That was, again, we always went out and we tested and we tested, and we put it with our users who are going to come into the building. We had defined personas for our people. And again, we run through tests. Is it simple? Is it simple? And again, as technologists, you have to dial back that tech, make it very, very simple. And again, make it the same interface wherever you are, whether it's a meeting room panel, whether it's your app, even stupid things, same color schemes of a red button here does the same thing, doesn't matter whether it's on your phone, on the iPad, on your laptop, or any other panel. So again, simple things. And that also helps accessibility as well.
Okay, no, that's good, Darren. I suppose I wanted, you had a good point there. I think both of you had a good point about it's not every system connected to everything, $100 billion solution. Let's just go crazy. It's about simplicity and understanding kind of the user experience. And so Ed, I suppose from your perspective, how do we make it easier for people moving to a new building to improve user experience, reporting and communication, some of the stuff these guys were talking about, but without driving up that cost per square metre?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we did at Deloitte Australia is we really were very purposeful in the working group that we created. So we brought together our technology team with our workplace team, with our facilities team, with our leadership, and we had a cross-section of representatives from the business as well, and created that combined working group. And the first thing we said, what are your pain points? What are the things that you really just are stopping you being productive or connecting? You're ultimately coming into a workplace to connect with other people to achieve a shared goal, right? If there's something stopping you being able to do that, it's not always technology. It could be a process. Yeah, it could be a policy. So I think there's real value in sort of stepping back and doing that. And you should be doing that before you rush to sort of making those technology decisions anyway. So that combined working group, there's real power in having that group meet on a regular basis and challenging maybe some of your processes and procedures that you have in place, or where is the sort of star on the hill that you want to get to. The other element is that you may have fragmented data points. We've already kind of talked about this. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. But bringing those fragmented data points together doesn't necessarily always have a large cost to it. You can do that in different ways. So looking at how you're collecting the data, where is the value in the data, as you were discussing, and how can we take that data and make that data available to, it's not really the data, it's the insights within the data. Yeah. How do we identify those? How are those being identified? How do we make that a simpler process? And again, it's strange coming from a tech guy. That's not always tech. That might be a process. That might be changing how it's, so there's different ways of doing that. But that combined working group, finding the insights in the data and finding out a way of getting to those insights in a more efficient manner are two things that I would recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Ed. And that's why we take a holistic look at workplace strategy as well, and why we work so well with you guys in terms of technology performance requirements. I'm so sorry. I told them to move forward so you didn't have to come in and sit at the front. I'm so sorry. I know, I did tell them. So one of the things that I've heard both of you guys say is, and I've heard clients say it as well, is it's really bridging that gap between the workplace, which is often owned by the tenant, okay, and the building system that's often owned by the developer. And I was just talking to Queensland Health here about that. And, you know, they're in different buildings with different developers. So probably, Justin, what is your take on bridging that gap between the workplace owned by the tenant and the building systems owned by the developer and operator?
Yeah, it's a challenge because, you know, sometimes you have a tenancy moving into a new building that don't consider the building systems that are currently there. And, you know, the decisions are made not in relation to those building systems. And I find that there's still power in any workplace tenancy company that can talk and communicate to a base building provider to say and explain to them what you need if you have a clear purpose and you're able to explain the value of why you want to connect to those building systems. And if you're able to, we've done this with New South Wales government, where we've combined their access control system, and we went and tapped into each of the base building developers and had to go through a process. But what we were very clear on a plan of what we required, the purpose why we required it, and a lot of them were accepting. And if we had a clear message, otherwise it gets a little bit too complicated, a little bit too complex, it's all a bit wishy-washy, then you get a little bit of resistance. But if you are able to stipulate a clear strategy and a plan of the purpose of why you're wanting to connect to that base building information, and you can show them how to do it and the process that you can go and get it, and it doesn't affect the operation of their building systems, then you're going to get probably a more encouraging sort of response and cooperation. What that does is that enables when a user, a visitor, an occupier, their building journey starts at the car park, starts at the lobby. You know, it starts even when they're at home. So having the transparency of base building systems and tenancy systems all combined together then starts enabling you to operate that workplace a whole lot more efficiently. We're now introducing after-hours schedules that can be done by tenants, so that you're not having to send a building manager an email and they're making a phone call, and therefore when things change, it has to change again, and then they've got to go and get to their BMS contractor to turn the HVAC on Saturday for the team and so forth. All of that now can be integrated together if you can bridge those two gaps. You know, alerts, alarming can interface into the workplace system. So there's a real purpose in doing it. It is a challenge in some respects, but having a clear strategy is a process of how you're going to achieve it. Just simplifies the thing, as you were saying before. It's just make it all simple, and then everyone seems to get on board.
Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah, go on, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah. So just building on making it simple, and there's just a really important point in there. I was thinking about when you're talking about that. When we're advising clients or we're doing work in our own buildings, we know that the tech's not just in the building, right? It's actually the client, they're engaging with the tech outside the building, they're engaging with the tech at home. So we kind of run this model of entice, enter, engage, exit. Yeah. So we want to use the technology to entice you into the building. We want your car parking, your visitor process to be as simple as possible, as you were saying. When you come into the building, we want you to engage with the building, engage with other people. So we make sure the tech's doing that. When you exit and those elements, they're just really important. And some of them are within the building and some of them outside of the building. So, and it's all about making them simple. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good add, Ed. We've touched on this a little bit, but I think, even people in this room, I noticed that some of them have technology. You know, you talk to them and they say, yeah, we've got a desk booking system, we're using this. And yeah, we've got an access card, we're using this. I suppose, or we've got lockers, but it's sitting in silos, and it's almost like we're collecting the same data in all of it. Yeah. So I suppose, Darren, from your experience, what's the biggest barrier from moving from pragmatic systems, which a lot of people in this room probably have, to a truly integrated workplace experience.
Yeah, and bear in mind, for the Suncorp building, we were designing this back in 2020. The technology's moved on a little bit since then, thankfully. But we had to look, again, we put our people front and center of everything we wanted to actually achieve out of this. And when we looked at the various platforms available to us from both what the landlord, Mirvac, were going to be doing, and then what we needed to be able to manage as Suncorp as well as managing the building, and then looking at, okay, how do we then also give our people a great experience as well? We had to really we cleared the board with all the standard systems that you put in there. We basically looked at, okay, if we want to give our people the best experience, ignoring all the platforms that are out there, how should we be doing it today? And that gave us an architecture to work from and a way of working to work from that made our people front and center. We looked at some of the common types of calls that our workplace teams were receiving. It's too hot. It's too cold. The aircon's broken. This meeting room's not coming online correctly. And we looked at how can we integrate all that intelligence together. Mirvac, this was only their second smart building as well. So there was massive amounts of learning going on from all involved. And part of this then was looking at, okay, what systems can we truly get to talk to each other now that will get the experience that we're looking for? And again, trying to meld landlord systems with tenancy systems is quite, back then was very, very complex. The concept of sharing landlord data with the tenant was pretty much not even thought of. The platforms, Tridium, for example, would send every piece of tenant information. Doesn't matter whether it was Suncorp or one of the other tenants, you'd get access to everything. Not acceptable. Gallagher, the security systems, would share all users that had been configured, not just the ones that we wanted, i.e. just Suncorp's. And that was a back and forth. So again, we were having to constantly work with our technology partners to introduce new functionality, to develop new functionality, to give us the segmentation that we needed in the back end, to be able to give our people the great experience in the front end. Keeping it simple, again, the app, you could go and if you had booked your desk, you could click on your desk and actually see the temperature that the sensors were recalling to help sort of reset the perception of what the real temperature was that's being recorded. And we could also marry up from a few different systems that were reading temperatures that, for example, you move into a new building, you're constantly rebalancing your aircon systems. Yeah, you turn on new floors, you're rebalancing. And sometimes you find faults that the aircon system's not reporting, but other sensors are reporting and saying this building is, or this area is absolutely freezing cold. No wonder why people are complaining about it. And again, it's making that information very, very simple. To ignore this very, very complex data stack that's developing in the background. And when we started using all of the sensors, we were literally pulling terabytes of data a day into the management platform. PlaceOS was our integration of where we did this, and we massively expanded PlaceOS's capabilities to do things that PlaceOS had never even thought about. It managed Gallagher, it managed the Tridium systems as well, but it gave us a very simple user experience and a very complete user experience. Our users didn't have to care. They were going into end-of-trip facilities that were on a different security control system. That was all managed. And for our users, seamless experience all the way through. Very, very simple experience we wanted to give our people, and consistent as well.
Yeah. Does anyone want to add to that? No. Yep.
We build our own smart building database. I might talk about this a little later on, but we made a conscious choice to do that. The values in the insights, the values in the workflow. So putting all this tech in, you're putting the tech in for two major entities within your organizations. Your employee community, yep, they want to be able to come in, as the guys have been saying, and use a meeting room very simply, find a desk very simply, find where they are, book a visitor in, book a car parking space. So you've got that employee community. It's got to be simple tech to use. But another element that you're putting this tech in place is for the decision makers in your organizations. So the CFOs, the executives, they want to know how many spaces are being used. Now you can guess, you can estimate, but if you put in the right technology, you don't need to guess anymore. You can put that data in the hands of decision makers so they can make decisions about how spaces are actually being used, how you can design and optimize the design of your current workplaces, or use that data to design your future workspaces. So and in real time, you can actually do it in real time. That technology exists. So you can serve those two communities by consolidating that data in a smart and simple way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose oftentimes, a lot of times we do these things and it's because there's a big event. So there's a lease pending and therefore we're going to do this big technology upgrade. But I think in this day and age, we're often finding that, we're trying to do a portfolio strategy. Maybe the first stage of that portfolio strategy is an interim solution where we're changing the way of working and we're implementing technology. And it's not driven potentially by a lease event. So my question to you, Justin, is oftentimes the work needs to be done regardless of a leasing event. And what do you see as the practical challenges when dealing with legacy systems?
Legacy systems, it's no one really wants to go into a building and change out the BMS system or, rip out the whole access control system or vertical transport system. So technology today, more systems, with firmware and software updates and so forth, they can become more capable, but the identification of which of those systems, when you're doing a major rollout, which systems are you needing to change and for what purpose? And, in that sense, you can start to spearhead, I suppose, and focus on, the time and the effort that's required for those systems that will give you the best purpose and the best bang for your buck. There is no need, if you can put some software or converters, there's multiple things out there now that we can introduce as gateways or middleware that can take certain legacy systems and convert them to be able to share data into building platforms and so forth to integrate into a centralized system. The legacy side of things with that is if you choose the right ones, then maybe you're saving yourself some time and effort because some systems there you may not need to change, or the other ones there that you can just really focus in on and sort of aim for those to be delivered, I suppose. More?
I'll keep going. It's got a lot more to go. So, Ed, I think one of the things that you touched on was outcomes, and you've always talked to me about the decision platform that you created for the leaders. I suppose for people in the room, I suppose I want to just understand a bit more about the measurable value. So you've built this integration, costs some money. I want to see where you've seen the measurable value. Is it in productivity, employee experience, cost reduction, decision making? What actually changed and measurably when you integrated these systems?
Okay, there's lots, but I'm going to focus on two. Yeah. So one is all 11 Deloitte offices have shrunk their real estate footprint significantly. We now squeeze a lot more people into a lot less space. So our huge tower in the center of Sydney, overlooking the Opera House, that has 1,621 seats. We've got 4,000 staff in the Sydney region. Yep. And we use that as a mixture of policy and technology to allow that 4,000 community to use that space. So what does Deloitte get for that? Deloitte gets a flagship location and doesn't spend the cost of having a flagship location for 4,000 staff. Yeah. And that's the trend we see with clients, particularly in the commercial sector. They are doing more with less space. Yeah. So they want to use that space in a really effective way. So that's a measurable outcome that we've definitely achieved. Another measurable outcome is we've transformed we have a joint facilities and workplace team, and we have transformed the way that they operate. What they used to do in the past is the executives would come to them and say, my team's never coming in, my team doesn't have enough space. They would go download data from disparate systems and then produce a report. That report would be argued over, and they go back and forth, and then they come to a decision about how they manage the situation of not having enough space or their team's not coming in. That's been completely transformed because now our executives and leadership no longer go to the facilities and workplace team and ask for data. That doesn't exist anymore. Instead, all our leaders, depending on their level, they have access to a live dashboard. So if I'm the COO, I can go into a live dashboard and I can look at every team. I can look at every team in the organization. I can look at how often they're coming in. I can look at benchmarks. I can look at every single space. I can say, oh, 10-person meeting rooms are never used. And that's just really transformed the way the business operates, really, because there's no longer this disagreement in terms of a report because everybody's looking at the same hymn sheet, so to speak. The facilities and workplace team love this because they're no longer constantly challenged all the time. And they just love the fact that the executives don't have to, they're just focusing on other tasks. So that's been a really big value driver out of us because an executive's not going to come and ask the workplace and facilities team for additional space if they know that they just don't need it, So that consolidation of data and those live dashboards, it's really transformed how that team operates. Yeah.
And I mean, I think we're speaking to the choir a little bit here, but, when you say, the amount of space for 4,000 people versus, it's really 1,000, then you're getting 4,000. The value of that is quite high. I mean, just as an example, on a 4,400 square metre, for 795 people, after you've implemented technology and space, for the same 795 people, it's a $23 million over 7-year cost after the capital uplift. So we're not talking about small numbers here. That you're getting that value, and the cost of that integration is peanuts compared to that.
It really is. That once we implemented this one building and the executives started realizing the power of it and what they're able to achieve, it's just a given. I spend my time talking actually Deloitte Singapore. They're just about to do the same thing. So it's a trend that I don't think is going to be reversed. Hybrid working is not going anywhere. Your employees want to come in when they want to come in, and employers want to maximize the space. That dynamic's not changing.
Yeah. That's a great reminder of the value of what organisations can do once systems are connected. I mean, they can do some things with the disparate, but once they're really connected, that's the power of them. So I suppose, Darren, from your perspective, what outcomes have you seen that make that valuable really tangible?
Yeah, one of the key design tenets behind Brisbane HQ was strong eco-credentials, and not just nice tick boxes that say it's a green building, but to really, both Mirvac and Suncorp were very passionate about making this a very, very green building, low carbon. Again, putting up a brand new building is very high carbon concentration, but your running costs in terms of carbon reduction was very, very important. So we applied all of the eco-credentials to all of the ways we thought about the systems and how the systems talk to each other. So, for example, lots of aircon running, very, very inefficient, especially if you've got nobody sitting there. So PlaceOS basically being the middleware and seeing all the information coming back from all the occupancy sensors, knowing, because it's also talking to Microsoft platform, knowing what the calendar bookings are in meeting rooms, could see, for example, this meeting room has no bookings for the entire day. I'm not bringing the aircon on in this space until I can actually see bookings. Now, on a single room, probably doesn't move the dial that much, but when you have 400 meeting spaces in a building, that really starts adding up to become real dollar. Number one, real dollars you're saving because you're not burning electricity for your aircon and cooling spaces that you don't need to cool. But also from a carbon reduction offset, that's really, really important because, again, you're not burning electricity that you don't need to. So that's, again, we can then also look at the space occupation as well. If there's only a fraction of the people booked into desks in that area, it knows it doesn't need to go full bore with its air conditioning to actually try and cool down the floor or even heat up a floor on the unusual days in Brisbane. But it can actually start applying and supplying information into the BMS to say, actually, you can dial all of this control down because the occupancy is going to be very low in this area. And the floors in the Brisbane in the Suncorp building are basically set up in 4 quadrants. So each floor, 4 quadrants, all the way through the stack of the building. So you could effectively reduce 1/2 of the building, 1/4 of the building, or an entire floor. You can also shut down entire meeting room spaces. Again, all intelligently done. No people interacting. And if you've suddenly got people then wandering onto the floor, it then actually senses them and actually starts spinning up. Not full bore, but recognizes how many people have moved to the floor. Someone goes into a meeting room. Yeah, if you've been in a meeting room that hasn't been cooled for probably 24, 48 hours and it's summer, that may be a little bit of a warm meeting room for 10, 15 minutes, but it will bring the aircon down very, very quickly. And again, it's using those spaces very efficiently. And again, the other part of measuring that we look at was power consumption across the floor. And it's little things when you're looking at the entire building add up very, very quickly, even to the stupid things of the energy efficiency of the monitors that you're using. And we went for the very latest generation, very lowest power consumption monitors you could possibly get at that point. They go into standby, so it reduces it. But again, over 4,000 monitors in a building, if they're left on overnight, they consume over a period of a year a large amount of electricity. And volume really matters. When you can measure that, and actually a part of the design was like these desks here, if you're not occupying it, the power shuts off, no power to your monitor, no power being burnt and wasted, basically. Again, those are things you can measure very, very effectively through the right control systems. They make a real difference when you look at the entire building.
Yeah, that's a good insight. And Justin's actually helped us with some of that. I believe we're measuring the power and water and all of that. So
also too, when tenancies are like in this environment now, when the utility bills come in, and I remember, back in about 2014, I was delivering Bangkok Embassy, and DFAT was explaining that because of all of the different agencies, they got the bill at the end of the month, and then they tried to count up, the square meters, right? And then for the next 3 months, it was just an argument, right, of who owned what. No, my team wasn't there on this day or that day. And they just said it was just a rhetorical conversation every time the water and the electricity came in. But nowadays, we can now gauge, I've got 3 meters, I've got a meter in that tenancy, I've got 2 meters here. So now we can start billing tenancies based on utility data. And it doesn't get argued with. It's just, here's the data. Now you think about how much time you're going to save that everyone else can go and do something else for that whole 3 months. A government agency being able to work for 3 months rather than arguing about a water bill or so forth. And when you can split that across multiple tenancies and bigger buildings, then you're starting to see that data is saving time. Doesn't look pretty, but it's got that sort of invisible, as we were saying before, sort of benefit.
I'm going to jump to a different topic slightly. AI. It's on everyone's mind. So I think my question is for Ed. So Ed, in practice, with the solution that you've got, where does AI generally enhance human capability in the workplace, and where might it be oversold?
Sure. So there's no way we're going to have a tech conversation without mentioning AI, right? So there's 2 main ways. I'll talk about the benefits, and then I'll talk about perhaps where it's being oversold. And this is what we're doing it internally in Deloitte, but we're also talking to clients about it. So at the moment in Deloitte, you access an application and you go and find your desk and you go and say, I want to work at that desk, right? Might tell you who else is sitting around that desk, or you can select, I'm going to go and book that meeting room, and you do it all on a floor map. But what we're working on at the moment is actually you can have a conversation with Copilot. Yep. And you'll just go into Copilot and say, I want to work next to Fred. Yep. Fred's coming in. Copilot will come back and say, Fred's coming on Friday. We'll book that desk for you. So we're actively working on setting that up, getting our Copilot environment, because we've implemented Copilot with all our employees, and getting that talking to our smart voting system. Yep. We're probably going to have that operational this year. But we actually want to go and take that a step further, and we actually want Copilot to go the other way. It's got the data, and for Copilot to talk to us and say, hey, Ed, I know you usually coming in on a Fridays. We know you're working with Sarah, because it's got that data, knows that I'm working on a project with Sarah, and saying, we've booked you a desk next to Sarah. So we think you're going to eventually move away from these booking systems and kind of float more into the background, and you won't be searching floor maps to go and select your spaces. You'll be having a conversation, or you'll be seeing prompts to say, hey, we know you, this is your behavior. Based on your behavior, will we book spaces for you? Do you want to confirm or not? Yeah. So we think that's going to be a value add. Almost think about, smart bodying system becoming a bit like a buddy that helps you sort of set up your working week. The other element is, we talked about those live dashboards. And actually, I'll talk about this as a benefit and as being oversold, because we're testing this right now. So we've got all these lovely dashboards. The executives love them. If you're head of audit, you can go in and you can see all the audit teams. You can see what spaces they're being used, how often they're coming in, that sort of thing. So that's all working great. But we're actually talking to go to sort of natural language, where you can go to AI and you can just have a conversation and you can say, how many phone booths are being used and how long are they being used for? And it will just spit back the data. And that's excellent. But we're really worried about the questions that the executive is going to ask. And we're knowing that a question can be asked, the same sort of question can be asked, but little sort of differences in the question can give you different data. Whereas a dashboard, you're getting that, that data is always the same. So it's something we're playing around with. We do eventually want to be able to sort of maybe minimize the dashboards or remove the dashboards, but we're just thinking through this challenge. So it's an opportunity and a challenge of how do we set up in a way that we always make sure that the questions are giving the right outputs. And I think that's something about AI. You're always checking those outputs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really interesting, Ed. I think I haven't heard that before, but I think that's a really interesting approach. Yeah. So the value of data obviously depends on who's using it and why. Like we've talked a bit about that, Ed. And most people walk into our space here and be like, oh, the floors are so nice. And oh my God, I love that piece of artwork. And oh, your kitchen bench is beautiful. But how do you get, and there's a lot, and if you think about it, when we spend the money on this big workplace project, a lot of it's spent on the fit out, especially with the construction costs where they're sitting right now. So probably, Justin, my question is, since data is not a visible thing like, my kitchen bench and my floors and all of those, how do we help clients see that data can be just as important and put the money towards it within those projects rather than just those physical elements of the building or the workplace?
It was as shiny as the marble, or an architectural facade or something like that, because the story of selling it would be a lot easier. But the way that I've been selling it in with our business and helping clients sort of expand their data journey, I suppose, is it's about time and it's about efficiency. And if you are clear in the strategy of the data that you want, and we didn't go back to the first point of just capture all the data for everything and it just doesn't become a monolithic system that you don't use, that then you can say, well, what's the efficiency time and how do you value a good user experience? Because that if I'm at home and I want to book my desk and I go into Copilot and I say, I want to book a desk in Sydney today or whatever it be, the value of how all the systems interact behind the scenes, out of that one interaction, you've got all of these connections coming through the back end of that system, in which then enables that user to walk straight through the car park, straight into the lobby, doesn't have to check in at reception, doesn't have to wait in a queue, can then get to their floor, got their mobile phone, they can book a coffee, they can interact with that single interface, I think, as you were saying before, right? So how do you value that? And how do you value that someone enjoys coming to the office because it's simple? And that is a message, and trying to communicate that through. It's harder than saying, here's a $3,000 rug and it looks really pretty with this really nice floor. And it's just always trying to reiterate that efficiency process. Now, that's from a user perspective. If you then go to the workplace manager once upon a time had 17 different spreadsheets, had to try and collate all of that data. It took them 3 weeks. For the government that we've just worked with, it took them, they could never get real-time data on utilization, and it always relied on single segmented systems. It took them about 2 weeks to get 3 weeks ago data. Now, with the value of and this is where the value of data is by explaining, well, if we now have a real-time dashboard, that you now are developing, and we're developing in with AI and saying, go and show me this, then how much time are you saving of all of those different people and all of those different departments that were chasing around and finding that spreadsheet to now having it instantaneously available? And I feel as though when you're getting those sorts of messages across, then people start understanding, the real true value of data. Unfortunately, it is visible. You're never going to beat the carpet or the rug, but I think you've got to tackle it from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I suppose, Darren, do you want to just build on that a little bit more? Like, how do you help organisations connect data to outcomes that people can actually see and value?
Yeah, exactly. To your point, as technologists and as workplace people, we love data. We love it. Oh, it's amazing. But the problem is in fact, all of our users that go into the building, they don't care about it at all. Our leadership generally doesn't care about, you've got terabytes of data you're mining. What they generally will care about is, what is the human experience that you've delivered? What are the human observations of your building that you can actually give a better outcome? When you make the data into actionable outcomes, that you've identified that people or a group of people persistently use a 10 space meeting room when there's 2 people in there. Inefficient use of space. You can then put a corrective measure in to actually say, hey, Bob, unless you really need to use a 12-person meeting room, please use a 2-person meeting room, because, again, you are inefficiently using our space there, and you're potentially stopping a meeting that could have been held in there. So it's turning it into outcomes that you can actually show leadership that there's a benefit to collecting all this data. If you can show, again, through the utilization, that a quarter of your floor plates consistently are unoccupied, you can then actually use that as start to inform a decision around, do you still need all this space? Does the space need to be reconfigured? Are we seeing people preferring to use one style of desk over another? Are people preferring one style of furniture over another? Because, again, with occupancy sensors, you can see, does somebody actually like that soft furnishing? Do they prefer a different style of soft furnishing? And when you start stacking it and looking at that data across your building, you can see if even some of the basics, do people like one style of furniture over another? Because you can see patterns out of your data when you convert it to what a human experience is having inside your building. So again, we had to learn very, very quickly. You have to step away from the data. Data collection is very important, but you have to turn it into human experiences that actually translate to outcomes for your leaders, that you can guide them.
Yeah. Okay, last question, because I would like the audience to get a chance to ask you some questions. Same question for all 3 of you. So if we look ahead in 5 years' time, because people are making decisions now. So in 5 years' time, what will employees and visitors expect as the baseline, okay, for digital experience that today probably still feels a bit advanced? So what's your vision? What's going to look like in 5 years' time?
A lot of focus on having an AI-enabled workforce. I think if you're not consolidating your data now in your workplace, you're not going to have an AI-enabled workplace. And I think in 5 years' time, a lot of people are going to have AI-enabled workplaces, which personalize the working experience because it knows you're coming in, it knows your preferences, it can enable the workplace settings based on those preferences. So I think I think those organizations that move now will prepare themselves for that future.
It's Justin next, but you can go.
You don't like sticking to the script.
We haven't so far, so.
I have.
Yes, you have, yes. The things that we developed for Suncorp's HQ almost 5 years ago now, whenever I go into a new building, I always look at how have other people done this. And one of the things that I'm very proud of, it is still, even in Australia, world leading, world class in terms of the technology integration, the experiences you get from the building. The standard things that people should expect going forwards are what we developed for our building and what we're slowly seeing out in industry as well. That credentials are mobile. It's a digital credential that you use. Our security folks are fast realizing badges are security risks now. They can be stolen very simply. They can be carried through, and suddenly you've got people inside your building that shouldn't be there. A digital credential that's tied to your smartphone that requires biometrics, way more secure. That should be standard in 5 years. It's slowly being introduced, but in 5 years, that should be just a norm. A building that actually understands, and I think, Ed, you were saying this as well, that understands what your work patterns are. Why are you going in? It's, again, we call it in Sun Corp a place of purpose, that you're going in because you're doing a certain thing. After COVID, it rewrote the script of why you go into an office. So we looked at it as a place of purpose. It understands why you're going there. It knows that it's going to put you near certain types of meeting rooms that you're going to be using for the day. To make it simple, you shouldn't be fighting between landlord systems and tenant systems. It's, again, frictionless, seamless, and easy, simple experience. So for me, those should be the standards, absolute bare minimum in 5 years. Oh, sorry.
I think I'd only want to add, because they're all very, very much similar. I think the building has to give every user a hug. And in really simple terms, it needs to know that you're coming. It needs to have everything in place. You know, when you turn up to a building, you're going to interact with 6 systems before you even get to the lobby. And you want one interaction, whether it be booking a desk, telling AI that you're coming to this site. Too much these days, you know, people feel foreign in a different office within their own company. They feel like a contractor. They want it all centralized. So now you're talking that one phone and that one digital access enables you to attend to any one of those buildings, just like it was your home building. And therefore you should have all the visibility that you need to be able to interact with not only the precinct as well around it, but also within it. And I think keeping along that line, I think AI, I don't know if we know exactly where AI is going to go. And it's a tool. It can't be the decision making, because that could lead into bad decisions, right? It still needs that human element. But I feel as though AI is going to drive this and guide this in a different way that we may not really understand right now. But having the foundations and the fundamentals of having the ability to utilize it at its right purpose and then to integrate to what you actually need is the way forward for where we're all trying to take the next building and the next building. And we're making small steps every way. Every year there's an advancement. Digital access, Apple Wallet, this physical card thing. See facility managers with cards this thick for being so many. I remember Kate at APA, you had 5,000 cards. You had a plastic bag. Yeah, John's still got that plastic bag, right? Right. All of that needs to be the past. Apple Wallet and having that technology so it doesn't break. Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff. It's all a bit hit and miss. There needs to be that real NFC foundation, right? Which Indra at the back there with OnYouGo is enabling, and it's about joining all of that together.
Okay, that's good.
5 years.
Yeah, fast 5 years. I think there's some people in the room thinking, oh my God, I got to start now. What do I do now? No, I appreciate those insights. And I know we've covered a lot of ground, from best practices to data integration to the future. I'd probably like to open up the floor to the audience, and they can ask you more specific questions. But for anyone who wants to ask a question, can you just use the microphone? Because we've had a lot of requests to record this session, but they won't be able to hear your question if you don't use the microphone. So sorry, you have to use the microphone. So is there any questions that anyone wants to ask? So it's just like not sitting at the back. Hey, Chris.
It's Chris from the Department of Health. Ed, you said something earlier on about being worried about the questions that the leaders were going to ask. Could you just elaborate on what the questions were or why you were worried about them?
Yeah, sure. So we've worked really, really hard on producing a dashboard for the leaders within Deloitte. Yep. And the access to those dashboards, you get different sort of views on that dashboard, and the filters are different based on your role. Yep. But we always know in that dashboard that those leaders are looking at the same data. Even the play around of the filters, they're going to get the same answers. But if a leader asks a question of, I don't know, how often is the audit team coming in? Are they coming on these particular days? Like, just the output of that question, if another leader asks a similar question along similar lines and is getting a different output, that's what we're worried about, and we're putting it through a lot of testing. So we want to get to a stage where it's always like, you're using ChatGPT, right? And you ask it one question, and then you ask it another question, you get a slightly different answer. And that's what we want to, because we work so hard on getting this single pane of glass where everybody, facilities team, workplace team, leaders, all are looking at the same, they're getting the same answers every time. Yep. And we don't want to, even though AI is a step up and you can ask it questions like you ask a human being a question, we just want to make sure we don't step backwards in terms of the value. Yep. Does that answer that? Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Other questions? I know I'm giving you the eye.
Apologies, I'm going to pull everyone back into the AI topic.
Oh, yeah.
Just more so on future of workplace, and rather than AI-enabled property, just future-proofing actual people to be using AI tools. How do you think that's going to change the physical workplace?
Question for me or anyone?
So I was looking at you, Edson, because you.
I don't mind if
anyone that feels like they have an answer.
Okay.
And
okay.
maybe I'll give a bit more guiding. I'm thinking like some of the things I've been hearing is AI is becoming more agentic. People are actually just talking to computers more with speech. So now open plan office is at risk, and so that's where I'm going.
Okay. So this is a case of people talking to it in an open plan office and there's noise.
Just as an example of how AI is going to change the way people actually work and what impact you guys think that will have on the spaces we design.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to be honest, we don't know yet. We've only sort of had Copilot working in our environment for 6 months. So released out to 11,000 users. So understanding how the behaviors are changing in the office will be quite interesting. It's something we'll just all have to monitor really and see how that's adapting. But we're still sort of looking at the COVID hangover, basically. Everybody comes in the office and puts on a headset. And we find that we're doing things internally to break that up. But so that is a behavior that we're still dealing with, and the pandemic ended quite a while ago, and we're still working out how we adapt to that. So how we adapt to AI, my understanding is I think is a little bit too early, and we'll just have to give it a little bit more time and monitor, and then adapt to it. Yeah.
At least you'll have the data.
We will. Yes. There you go.
Diminishing returns. You talked a lot about data. And you could just keep on going, but there's got to start to be a little bit of a trade-off in the amount of effort you put into collecting the data. So if you're going to advise an organization that maybe had its hands on or access to a lot of data but was information poor, where would you say to focus the efforts to deliver the greatest benefits?
I've been talking a lot.
It's interesting because I have an AI project I'm working on at the moment, and data cleanup is one of the big things we talk about, because again, we all know junk into an AI engine, junk will come out again, and you'll get some really weird results. We've been looking at it from the cleanup of, to that question, how much effort and how far back do we go to do our cleanup? How do we validate the data sources that are coming through now are giving us good data as well? So I don't think there's any one answer, because you have to assess, number one, what are you trying to ultimately get your AI engine to be doing down the road in terms of what are you going to be feeding it? Do we trust those systems that are being fed, or is there a question around some of those systems that are feeding that data? So then it's a case of, do you focus in on those systems to correct that data? Is it a case of you're pulling data also out of a workplace ticketing system that could have anything inside it? So again, you have to look at the use case, and AI is, again, as Ed said, it's very early days. I know we've all got ChatGPT or all the varieties that are out there, but from an enterprise perspective, our leaders are loving wading into the AI conversations because it's a very hot topic. But the reality is we are still way behind on how we can get a productive use of AI. So yes, the data journey is the first place to clean up, start getting your data ready for AI ingestion. And again, you have to look case by case as to your best bang for your buck. Sometimes it's a case of actually don't ingest anything. If you've got new systems coming in, and where I'm at the moment, we're making calls, we're not going to ingest any data. We are going to start afresh from clean systems and start ingesting from that point onwards, because then we have a high rate of success. But if you know your systems are currently feeding good data, very different decision. So it's not one answer will fit every single scenario. It's very complex.
What can I add to that? I think having a data standard and naming, if you're, what would I say? I think the legacy systems, I suppose, look, everybody said this, the same sort of thing. If you're getting in new systems, having a data standard, every project that we end up doing, we have to have naming topologies and have to have data naming standards. Right? It creates the format for how you move forward. Identifying, what's the purpose of the data? I think that's the very first question. What is that purpose of that data that you do need, right? And if there is a purpose for that, that's then the value that you have of saving it, or spending the time to ratify it, right, and bring it back into that system. That'd be the simplest way that I would, sort of comment on that. It's all about purpose.
There's a question. Go ahead to the AI.
Yeah, so I think we hear a lot of people just talking about AI, but I don't know a lot of people really understand how finite it can be, because we're hearing about chat, we're hearing about Gemini, we're hearing about all these common large language models. But what people really need to think about in their planning with AI is having an AI specialist, because they can take these models and put them in their little buckets and refine them specifically to your task, right? So the general one's not going to do that because they're general. But if you've got an AI specialist in there working in your company, leading your team, they're going to take bare metal AI. They're not even going to use the APIs that the AIs use, and they're going to train that and say, this is your job. And they're going to know. So you could then put that on your data, and then that, no matter how complex or how hard it is, you'll have trained that to learn what to do. And it, as AI does, it learns for itself, it keeps going, and you have AIs feeding AIs. So you've got to tune your AIs. It's not just the ones you hear, the common ones that everyone talk about. That's not real AI in business. So you've got to invest in having an AI specialist to do that.
I might just talk about sensors a little bit, if that's all right, because there is a cost to putting all these sensors in. Yeah. And what I typically did is I said, well, here's the cost of the space and here's the cost of understanding the space on an ongoing basis. Yeah. That's kind of how I work it with clients. Some clients, they do not want to, they just balk at the idea of implementing a whole bunch of area sensors and depth sensors, and they don't want to do a little bit of it. And sometimes what we do is we go in and we implement sensors on one floor, and then we use that to extrapolate out what is happening before they make a decision about going all in on an IoT or sensor approach. So that's something we also do. Yep.
There's a question here. Oh, yes. So one of the things that I'm hearing loud is about the employee experience, which is, so good to hear, because too often the employee is forgotten about when we think about sexy tech and all of those AI things. One of the things I'm really, what's on my mind at the moment is when I think about some of the benefits is, have you been able to measure or articulate discretionary effort? Because that's where we see some great benefits of employees that are actually going above and beyond. So we are no longer working in a clock in, clock out, 9 to 5 environment. We have this world of work, that work happens anywhere at any time. So have you ever seen or started to think about that employee discretionary effort piece as a result of some of the technology smart workplaces?
I'm going to be honest, I haven't yet. So, great question, though. Yeah. Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I was racking my brain thinking, okay, well, how can we have some examples of that? So once we got full occupancy in the building, we could definitely see some groups staying way later. Now we had to eliminate the functions that were, for example, call centers that were designed to be in there out of hours anyway. So you can start seeing that now. Did that feed into any other decision making? I think that, again, that was very early information for us. Longer term, that data is available. So if you can see that a team is regularly spending excess hours, and number one, that may also be a potential HR issue that you're also managing as well, because of overwork and then people putting themselves in harm's way when they leave the workplace. But again, I think that that aspect of using that technology is still in its infancy at the moment. I think the focus has been around having a great building experience. And I think that's probably even something AI will start helping with as well, to actually start noticing those trends, sifting through all that data and actually start drawing out trends from it.
The data would show which teams are actually spending that extra time in the office, right? Maybe the experience of, because it's so simple to sort myself out to get to the office, I'm enjoying being there. I think if I had the ability where on my phone I could go and just order the coffee that comes up, right? Or could get lunch, all those sorts of things. So maybe it's an indirect sort of benefit, yeah. On the flip side of that, you could probably find out the teams that aren't spending a lot of time in the office, which may create another HR problem. But I suppose it's about having visibility, right? And therefore continually monitoring and then looking at trends, right? Rather than just walking in the office and who's in today sort of thing.
But it's not just utilisation, it's also
sure. Yeah, definitely.
Assessment clients, because
sales go up.
Sweet spot where we saw people.
Okay.
Actually, there's an example of the adverse occurring in the early days of our building. We were starting to get requests saying, can you monitor what our teams are doing in there? And we had to actually intervene and say, that's not what this technology is there for. If you believe you have a problem with your team, you actually need to step in and manage that situation. You should not be polluting the use of the technology to become big brother state, because then you'll create a different problem that if people think that you're constantly monitoring, they won't want to come into the building, because then you've created a hostile workplace. So yeah, we took some learnings very early on, and we had to stop people very early on saying, and just denying them access to certain data.
Just in the interest of time, we're just going to take one more question. The audience can Google these guys. We'll make sure you have this. We have it put it, and we have some time for the I'll just get one more question, and then we'll close it out, and then you can chat.
All right. So I have one question. I think I was going to say, if AI is said again, it's a drinking game, and we just move into that. My actual question's around cost. So property typically is cyclical. You get a lot of money in one moment and you have to guess, and it has to last as long as you're going to be in that location. And then you ask for a pile of money again and you go again. With the evolution in the ways of working and the value play that technology and the way that we're able to be more predictive or more interpretive of the way we're working, do you think we need to have a different type of conversation with the CFOs of our organizations about when they actually release funding and how we think about accessing funding, so that we're not making an investment that has to last 10, 12 years, but actually is around, it's a 3-year cycle, and we get to kind of dip back into the bucket and take that next evolutionary step, be it in, say, a technology upgrade or a space change or that kind of thing. Just curious on your views.
Yeah, actually, that particular issue came up again very early in our planning at Suncorp. Big technology assets were generally on an 8 to 10 year depreciation cycle. And there was a couple of key tenets that got applied for the building design. Number one, yes, this is an investment. It's a reboot of technology, because what we were designing in that building was designed to go into every other Suncorp building in Australia and New Zealand. But what you're then deploying can't be astronomical cost to actually expand out. It also can't be an astronomical cost to keep on running that technology, because otherwise that's going to be your first casualty when the budget cuts or budget pressures come, and then suddenly you've made your building non-productive. So we looked at our technology life cycle, and we had many conversations with our financial teams as well, because we needed to change that dial from a 7 to 10 year dial down to 3 to 4 years maximum. So then the business in its corporate planning, for the corporate financial planning, factored in that at certain times it was going to need to refresh. But what we also looked at was an upgrade or a refresh doesn't mean a gut of all technology. It's a component that you're replacing. It's a small component you're replacing. A lot of, in fact, the majority of the hardware we put in was designed to be constantly updated through firmware updates. New functions come up, and then the only changes you're really doing is if you want to change your cameras to 8K cameras. Cameras haven't changed that much in even in 4 or 5 years. Yeah, it's 4K still more than adequate for most VC work. So again, you build some of those principles into the design of the tech that you're rolling out. And yes, we had very robust conversations up front about our budget cycle that was going to be required, and also how we were designing the support of all those platforms as well to be low cost.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, it's got to be the tech that you're putting in. You've just got to be honest about it and just say that it's going to have to be renewed every 3 years, I think, in terms of the software. We actually think the software is probably more robust because the software is probably going to keep up. It's a case of just making sure the vendors keeping up with what's going on in the market, which they usually are, to be competitive with other in the sector. The hardware, particularly the sensors, we were very clear that we could, and not a huge cost, swap out our sensors if we needed to, because we think sensor tech is moving so quickly, and we're probably going to swap out some of our sensor tech at one point in time. But the conversations, so that's internal, but the conversations I'm having externally are, you don't need to be doing this at a lease cycle, right? We can go and put tech into one floor, couple of desks, couple of meeting rooms at a very low cost, and you can start getting a feel for this. We actually recommend, if you've got a lease coming up in a year, let's go and take a quarter of a floor, one floor, a couple of floors, and let's create this environment there. And actually, that's good from a behavioral change point of view for that organization. Let's get them people sitting in there, getting them ready for the new office, especially your leadership, and saying this is the new way. Right, and you've got to remember that the technology element in terms of moving into a brand new building is pretty small in the scheme of things, and by putting in that technology element, you're allowing that organization to perhaps reduce their real estate footprint. Yeah, so
yeah, I can't really add to that.
No, that's okay. I'm just conscious of everyone's time. No. So thank you so much, Ed, Justin, and Darren. I really, really do appreciate. You do deserve a round of applause. And thank you. Yeah, thank you. And for everyone else, these guys will be mingling for a little bit, but help yourself to wine and food and beer, and feel free to walk around our office and see some of the technologies that we have here as well. So thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.